2, 1.
Welcome back to All Woman. I am so excited about our next guest. He is a journalist, a documentary filmmaker, a social rights activist, and now an author. Please welcome Lukhanyo Calata. We're so excited to talk to you. We're like, I'm so proud of you for writing this book. We've been friends for 15 years or something, and the story has been in your head for a long, long time. Lukhanyo's father was one of the Craddock 4 who were brutally murdered by the state police in the 1980s, and you've written a book that goes through the whole story.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be here, to be surrounded by very beautiful women.
Oh, you can come again.
No, I appreciate it. The book is called My Father Died for This. It was written by myself and my wife, Abigail. And as you know, Fiona, we've always wanted, or at least I've always wanted to tell my father's story.
Yeah.
So I always imagined that I would do it through film because I'm a television guy, very much like you guys. In 2010, I had worked on a short film that I kind of used as a pilot, you know, in hopes of then making a full-on feature documentary film. But then in 2016. There was some issues at the media house that I was working for. So I then wrote a letter that was kind of critical of the censorship of news that was happening at this established organization which shall remain nameless. And then they fired us. And in the process of us getting fired and all of that, I was then approached by publishers who offered us the opportunity to write a book. It was a wonderful project for me to get to do with my wife.
It must have been incredibly cathartic for you, the writing process and getting in touch, but also incredibly emotional for you and your family as well. I mean, I can't begin to think what your mother went through, having to relive all those memories.
It was hard for my mother, and Abigail. I think when we were deciding who's going to write which aspect, we decided that she would be the one that really brings my mother's voice into this book. The two of them have a very good connection, so I couldn't believe that she had honored my mother in the way that she had.
Look, I feel white people specifically need to read this book, and it came up for me, you know, with the death of Umama Winnie Mandela, the reaction of the nation. Like, white people were like, oh, she was a rebel rouser and a trouble causer, and black people were distraught because the mother of the nation died. And I think it really brought home to me, the press and the media gave very, very different stories to white people, to what was really happening to black people in this country. I grew up in Botswana, so I saw both sides, and it was a very different, you know, when you talk to white people in South Africa, they have a very different recollection of the 1980s. And I think people, you know, if white people now want to understand race and they want to understand where the broader part of our population and where the emotions lie and why, they must read a book like this, because these are the stories that they either chose not to hear or were not exposed to. What your family went through, but what so many families went through, you know, hopefully people are going to read it and go, okay, I have a little bit more of an understanding of where we are as a nation and why we are here as a nation, because this happened while we were sleeping.
I appreciate you saying that. I really do. I think what we found as we've, you know, launches and speaking at various events is exactly that, where people say that we didn't know. It's also then become very clear to me that me standing up at my place of work and saying that we shouldn't censor the news, we should report the story as it is. I now realize, I mean, it's taken me 2 years to fully grasp what a lot of people had grasped right from the get-go about what I had done, and how important it was for us as, you know, the organization and the public broadcaster to tell the people's stories, because sometimes the stories aren't really what we want to hear. They aren't necessarily what we want to see. But as journalists, as authors, as filmmakers, it is our responsibility to tell our society the story as it is. We were able to tell my family story. We were able to tell it as it happened. You know, I didn't have anybody saying that no, don't put that in, or no, don't put in. We told the story as it is, and we found ton of information about the what was happening in Craddock. You know, and one of the things that we spoke about, for instance, was, you know, just the political resistance of the people in Craddock, and how in 1985, from January 1985 onwards, the people of Lingelihle, the township where I'm from, the people there had managed to resist the apartheid government to such an extent that in January 1985, the township liberated itself from the grip of the apartheid government. You know, we had a review the other day where someone was saying, Wakanda for what? Craddock has been doing this since 1985. So
That's so
it
cool.
was, yeah, it's a real honor.
Lukhanyo, freedom of expression and freedom of journalism, they're two very important things. I know you were actually part of the SABC 8, and you were taking a stand against the editorial policies at the time, and you were fired for that.
For a very long time, I had considered what I had done to have been a very stupid thing, because obviously I'd risked my family's well-being, you know, the circumstances of our family. I mean, I have a wife. At this time, our son was about 3 years old. You know, so, and I had risked all of that in the name of freedom of expression, in the name of freedom of the media. But I felt that I had to do it. Look, under apartheid, for instance, the SABC was his master's voice. The SABC only reported what was in the best interest of the apartheid government, neglecting the voices of those that were the recipients of the atrocities of the apartheid government.
Like that story.
Yeah, and what the apartheid government was doing in townships, not just in Lingelihle, but all around the country. So once again, we were confronted with that same situation in 2016. We were heading towards an election. The powers that be at the SABC at the time had decided that, you know, we must try and report in such a way that favors one political party over the other. That just, it made me really angry, because it harked back to the SABC of the apartheid era, you know. So I decided this one Monday morning that I must say something. I must write and put it out in the public domain, and see what happens. So what has since happened is that, you know, people call me a social media activist and a social activist, and I appreciate the titles, but for me it was just, I'm not sure if I can say this, but I was just heartful of everything that was happening at the SABC at the time, and I took a stand, and fortunately for me, it resonated, you know, with the country, and I felt very blessed.
So Lukhanyo, you're speaking about Adrian Vlok and these military generals, and, you know, obviously up to now, the only person who's been prosecuted and is sitting in jail is Eugene de Kock for any kind of crimes against humanity. After the release of your book, I think it was exactly a week later, the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, decided to change that, and they're going to actually go after these guys. So it must have been incredibly vindicating for you, and I'm sure your book was a catalyst for this.
Yeah.
It was a couple of days after the release, and I had the good fortune to sit with the Minister of Justice, Michael Masuta, John Jeffrey, the Deputy Minister, who I write about in the book, and also Sean Abrams, who's the Director of National Public Prosecutions. And I had asked him the question because they had made a statement in Parliament talking about their commitment to justice. And for me, their words rang hollow. So I asked him, like, how dare you come in here and talk about your commitment to justice? Where's your commitment to justice for the Ahmed Timol family? Where's the commitment to justice for Victoria Mqenge's family? Where's your commitment to justice to us as the families of the Craddock Four? And it was in that briefing then where Sean Abrams then came out publicly and said, look, they will prioritize TRC-related cases.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That, I mean, when I say social activism, that is
Absolutely.
activism in action.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
What is a message that you wanted to to send out through this book around what our task is right now in South Africa?
We've had 24 years of a democratic South Africa, and in that, a lot of things have happened. And we've also forgotten who we are and where we come from and on what this democracy that we have today is built on. So I think the real message that I wanted to get through this book was firstly to remind us of the price of our freedom, but also critically to remember that those people who had laid the ground for us to be where we are today, we owe them. We owe them. We owe them our best. Right? So therefore, when the ANC isn't delivering the kinds of schools for our children that we deserve, we must remind them. Right? When the ANC isn't delivering the kinds of work opportunities for our youth, we must remind them. When they're not delivering public health, we must remind them. We have such a rich tradition of activism, of making sure that the state hears us, but we've forgotten about that. But also critically, we've had 24 years of democracy. We've gotten to live it, you know, we've felt it. Now we need to come back to the table, both black and white members of society, and we now need to redesign this thing because we've now lived it, you know? So we now say, okay, cool, after 24 years, we know that this is what works and this isn't what works. So now we need to leave what's not working and we need to concentrate on building a country.
I think one thing that we forget as citizens is in a democracy, we are the self-correcting mechanism. And it's through our actions and through our voices that we can chart the direction that we actually want to see and one that's productive for all of us.
Thank you.
Lukhanyo, thank you so much. I know it's been such a journey for you. I'm so, as your friend, I'm so immensely proud of the book, of the change that's come from the book, with the prosecutions, of everything. Please, South Africa, in fact, not just South Africa, wherever in the world, read this book. But please, white people in South Africa, read this book so we don't have this ignorance, this willful ignorance of we don't know each other's stories. Like, why has there always been the race issue? This is why. Because people really, really suffered and you didn't know about it. So I really want people to read the book, and thank you so much
Thank you
for coming and talking to us. And big love to your beautiful wife, Abigail. Thank you also for helping Lukhanyo write this, or for co-writing the book.
No, thank you very much, guys, and thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Stay tuned to All Women. More Real Talk for Real Women up next.